Let's be entirely honest here. We are all feeling a little bit of AI fatigue right now. Every single time you open your feed, it feels like this exhausting, never-ending tug of war. On one side, you have the absolute extreme hype bros, and on the other, the totally doom-obsessed skeptics claiming the sky is falling. Well, today, we're cutting straight through all of that noise. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to dive into a really fascinating counterargument based on the essay, AI isn't the product, human capability is.
So, right off the bat, let's just address the giant elephant in the room. Is this whole AI boom just one massive investment bubble? Look, if you're skeptical about this, your skepticism is totally valid. There is a very real chance we are in an AI investment bubble. We're seeing valuations that assume capabilities that literally do not exist yet, and the infrastructure spending is, well, it's absolutely gigantic. But, and this is absolutely crucial, we need to pivot our thinking here. A financial bubble doesn't actually mean the underlying technology is useless or a failure. Those are two completely different things.
I mean, we've all seen the circular economy argument from critics, and frankly, it's a bit exasperating to watch unfold. You can literally just follow the money right through this closed loop. Think about it. Microsoft dumps billions into OpenAI. Then OpenAI turns right around and uses that exact money to buy massive amounts of Azure compute from, you guessed it, Microsoft. Microsoft gets to turn around and report this booming cloud revenue to Wall Street, and meanwhile, NVIDIA is just sitting there selling hardware to power this whole infrastructure build-out. It's a closed loop of cash, and you know what? It absolutely deserves to be scrutinized.
But here is what's really interesting when you dig into it. Circularity by itself isn't fraud. Literally, all functioning economies are circular. Businesses pay their employees, those employees buy goods from businesses, and the wheel keeps turning. The only thing that actually matters here is whether sufficient external economic value eventually enters that system. If spending £1 on AI allows a business to create 5, 10, or even 100 pounds of brand new additional value in the real world, then that circulation is completely sustainable. If it doesn't, well, the investment will correct itself. But remember, that's an argument about capital allocation. It has nothing to do with whether the technology is actually useful. Section 1. Measuring the wrong people. Why our productivity math is broken. And this brings us to the core thesis of this whole explainer. We are fundamentally measuring the economic value of AI by looking at completely the wrong population. We keep seeing these widely cited studies showing that experienced software developers actually take longer when they use AI tools. So an expert who usually takes 10 hours might suddenly take 12 hours because they're bogged down debugging AI-generated code. Obviously, that looks like a 20% productivity loss. But compare that exact same scenario to a novice. Someone who previously would have needed, say, 500 hours just to learn the basic skills, or realistically just wouldn't have even attempted the project at all, can now pull it off in 20 hours. When you measure AI against the seasoned professional, sure, it looks inefficient. But measured against what that novice individual could previously achieve, the productivity improvement is literally thousands of %. We are entirely ignoring the people who couldn't have written the software in the first place. Expecting AI to just magically fix corporate economics without any human direction fundamentally misunderstands what a tool actually is. It's kind of like going down to the hardware store, buying a brand new hammer, leaving it in your garden, and then complaining 6 months later, "Where's my shed?" You can't just buy a hammer and expect a shed to magically appear out of thin air. The hammer enables the operator, sure, but human judgment, human purpose, and actual effort are still entirely required. Which leads us perfectly to what we can call the Minecraft problem. Imagine someone spends an hour using AI to code up a completely useless mod for Minecraft. Does that prove AI has zero economic value? No, of course not. If AI helps someone build something useless, that just proves human error in judgment. Think about it like a highly expensive, state-of-the-art CNC machine. If you use it to manufacture a piece of junk nobody wants, it doesn't mean the machine is useless. AI helping someone automate something nobody actually needs is a failure of human purpose, not a failure of the technology. Section 2. High and dry. Moving out of the cloud and into the mud. Okay, let's ground this theory in a physical reality. Let's look at a concrete, real-world example of an unconventional accommodation business called High and Dry. It's a proposed land-based, narrowboat hotel. Historically, starting a weird, unconventional hospitality business like this requires a mountain of work. You need market research, complex financial modeling, planning for site requirements, investor returns. It's a huge upfront cost, taking hundreds of hours. Normally, you'd have to hire expensive professional advisors just to see if the idea was even legally viable. But contrast that with an AI-assisted process. A single person with absolutely no professional business background, no commercial property experience, and working a completely unrelated full-time job was able to interactively work through all of that planning. The AI drastically lowered the barrier just to test the idea. So the really crucial point here is this. Even if this specific narrowboat idea completely fails, the AI hasn't somehow ceased to be productive. The entrepreneur was able to test a highly complex idea dramatically cheaper and faster than ever before. But conversely, what happens if it actually succeeds? Physical boats are purchased, real land is leased, cleaners receive wages. A tangible, real-world productive asset exists, where previously there was literally nothing but an idea floating around in someone's head. And let's say that business goes on to generate £500,000. Where exactly does the economic contribution of the AI appear? I'll tell you where it doesn't appear. It won't magically show up on an accountant's balance sheet under a neat little line item for AI productivity. There is no invoice from the business consultant they didn't have to hire. The value is just dispersed entirely throughout the economy. Traditional productivity measurements completely miss this because they struggle to identify AI's absolute most important effect, which is things being created that otherwise would never have existed at all. Section 3. Job replacement arrives quietly, missing the statistical signature. Let's shift gears for a second and address the anxiety around AI taking jobs, because honestly, we are probably looking for the completely wrong statistical warning signs. We are all sitting around waiting for dramatic headlines about mass redundancies and sudden layoffs, but the quiet reality is entirely different. A company doesn't necessarily walk in and fire everyone tomorrow. Instead, they just realize that 8 AI-assisted people can now easily do the work of 10. So someone naturally leaves the company and they just aren't replaced. A department grows from 8 people to 9 instead of from 8 to 15. A junior vacancy just never gets advertised. The immediate statistical signature of AI isn't mass firing, it's reduced hiring. Section 4. Education for a new reality. The end of the industrial model. This quiet replacement creates an absolutely terrifying problem for young people today. Our entire education system is basically an industrial model. It was specifically designed to produce entry-level cognitive workers who can follow instructions and demonstrate basic competence. But if AI automates away the junior tasks that young adults historically use to gain experience, we are in deep trouble. Preparing kids merely to compete with AI for traditional entry-level employment is a recipe for disaster. We need to foster an entrepreneurial mindset. Young people need to learn how to identify worthwhile problems, how to ask really good questions, how to spot unreliable information, and above all, how to combine skills from totally different disciplines to create something another human being actually values. Education has to drastically shift toward agency, creativity, and judgment. And this right here is the vital mindset shift. Young people need to transition away from asking the traditional question, what job will somebody give me, and start asking, what can I create that is useful? AI is going to make that transition both incredibly necessary and, thankfully, entirely possible. You know, history actually tells a really fascinating story about this. Back in the 1840s, railway mania was a massive financial bubble, but railways still transformed civilization. In the 1990s, the dot-com boom was famously a bubble, but the internet fundamentally transformed civilization anyway. And now, the 2020s, with the AI investment boom, history shows us over and over that speculative bubbles and civilization-altering technologies can absolutely exist at the exact same time. AI can be totally overinvested today and still become one of the most economically significant technologies in generations. Section 5. One final explainer experiment. Proving the thesis. Okay, we're going to break the fourth wall here for just a second and talk directly about the very explainer you are watching right now. The person whose arguments formed the backbone of this analysis, they had absolutely zero experience producing explainers. No broadcasting training, no professional interview background, nothing. Yet AI helped take those practical personal thoughts, organize them into a coherent, structured argument, and made this exact presentation possible. So think about it. The correct economic comparison here isn't about saving some professional time. The relevant improvement isn't, did AI make an experienced explainer creator 19% faster? Because there was no expert. The comparison is simply explainer versus no explainer. It's the sheer 0 to 1 creation of this content. And that leaves us with this final, profound thought to end on. Perhaps the wrong question is, how much faster does AI make an existing expert? The better question may be, how many people can now create something that otherwise would never have existed? That is where the true human capability lies. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is something you can create today that you couldn't have just a year ago?
Keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.